Alright, Chapter 2, Section 6, our goal for the day is to solve problems involving percents. And the first thing we're going to do is define percent. And a percent is a ratio that compares to 100. A ratio that compares to 100. And it might look something like 52%. You can have decimals in percent, so it might be like 0.6%. Or you could also have a very large number like a 500%. The first thing we're going to be asked to do is change from fractions to decimals to percents. Number 1 asks us to write 25% as a decimal and a fraction. This percent actually means out of 100, so we can write 25 over 100. You can use your calculator to reduce that, and as a fraction that would be 1/4. And then if you do 1 divided by 4, you can find your decimal. Or if you just take the decimal point in this number and move it 2 to the left, your decimal point will be, or your decimal will be 0.25. So 1/4 and 0.25. If anybody forgets which way to move your decimal point when changing from a decimal to a percent, if you write this on your paper, DP, and that stands for decimal and percent. And if you forget which order to put them in, they're in alphabetical order. And if you draw this little thing right here, those 2 little archy things, and 2 down here with arrows at the end, it can tell you which way to move the decimal point if you ever forget. If you're changing a decimal into a percent, you move your decimal point 2 places to the right. If you're changing a percent to a decimal, you move your decimal point 2 places to the left. And in this second one, we are changing a percent to a decimal, so we need to take this decimal point and move it 2 places to the left, and that will be 0.006. So that's our number written as a decimal. And the easiest way to write this as a fraction is to read the correct mathematical pronunciation for this number. This is not 0.006. This is our tenths place, this is our hundredths place, and this is our thousandths place. So this number is actually 6 thousandths. You hear the fraction there? 6 thousandths. So you would write 6 over 1,000. You always want to reduce your fractions, and if you divide both of those by 2, you would have 3 over 500. Number 3, writing 0.48 as a percent as a fraction, a percent and fraction. If you look at this little reminder thing, from a decimal to a percent, you're moving to the right. So we need to move this decimal point 2 places to the right, and that would be 48%. And then writing that as a fraction, we would have 48 over 100. Those can both be divided by 4. You can reduce it on your calculator, and your final answer would be 12 out of 25. Number 4, write 0.22 as a percent and a fraction. From a decimal to a percent, you move your decimal point 2 places to the right. So that will be 22%. Percent means out of 100. So you would have 22 over 100. You can reduce that in your calculator, or if you divide both of those by 2, you would have 11 over 50. The next 3 types of problems we're going to do, I'm going to show you 2 ways to do these, and you can pick which way you like better. The first type we're going to see is finding a percent of a number. We are asked to find 105% of 72. And the first thing you can do is just translate this English sentence into a mathematical equation. Find is an unknown. It's something we're trying to find, so we're going to call that X. And we want 105% of 72. The word of in English translates into math as a multiply. So we would change this to a decimal, and you would have 1.05 times 72. So find is what we're trying to find. This number equals 1.05 times 72. And if you multiply those two things, what do you end up with? Somebody multiply those? 75.6. The second method involves this little circle type thing. And I think you guys had something like this in science last year. And the of goes right here, and the equal goes up here. So 105% will be written as 1.05 of 72. And then this is what we're trying to figure out. If you have these two bottom numbers, you multiply. And if you had a top number and a bottom number, it kind of looks like a fraction, so you would divide. And here you would again do 1.05 times 72, which is 75.6. Example 4, finding 20% of 60. We're trying to find, it's our unknown, so that's going to be an X. 20% is 0.2 times 60. And when you multiply 0.2 times 60, I believe you get 12. And I'm going to do number 5 with the circle thing. 4% of 36. 4% as a decimal is 0.04. The of or the times goes there, and 36. So you will multiply 0.04 times 36. And what do you get when you multiply that? 1.44. So that would be your answer. The next type of question we're going to see says what percent of 60 is 15. And again, the first method is to translate from that English sentence into a mathematical sentence. What percent? It's our unknown, so we're going to call that X. Of 60, the English word of translates into a mathematical multiply. So what percent of 60? The English word is translates into the mathematical equal sign. So this is read, what percent of 60 is 15? And from there you divide both sides by 60. And I believe you get 0.25, which we need to write as a percent. So that would be 25%. And I kind of like these circle things for this type. What percent is what we're looking for. So we'll call that X. Of 60, this is where the of number goes, is 15. And then you see you have your 15 on the top, 60 on the bottom, and if you divide those, again, you will have 0.25 or 25%. Six and 7 are the same type of question. I'm going to do the first one the first way, the second one the second way. What percent is your variable? Of means multiply. 35 is translates into an equal sign. 7. So what percent is my unknown? Of means multiply. 35 equals 7. Dividing both sides by 35, you have 7 divided by 35, and that is 0.2, which is 20%. And number 7, I'm going to do with this circle thing. 440 is, well, the equal to or the is number goes up here on the top. What percent is our variable? Of 400. And now you can see that fraction. You have the 440 on the top, the 400 on the bottom. If you divide that, you end up with 1.1, which is 110%. And the third type, finding the whole. 40% of what number is 15? First way is to just translate this mathematically. 40% is 0.4. Of becomes multiply. What number, I'm going to call it n, is 14. And if you do this circle method, 40% is going to go in this first one as a 0.4. Of what number? We'll put an n there because we don't know the number. And the is or the equal number goes on top. And either way you choose to solve this, you're going to take the 14 and divide it by 0.4. Over here, 14 divided by 0.4. And what do you end up with for your decimal or percent? 35? So 0.35 or 35%. Number 8, 120% of what number is 90? 120% is 1.2. Of becomes multiply. We don't know the number. Is becomes equal. From there we would divide both sides by 1.2. And I believe you end up with 75. They're not asking for a percent this time, they're just asking for the number. And number 9, I'm going to use the circle part. 40 is, so that's going to go up there. It's the is or the equal. 0.8%, we need to change that to a percent. So we need to move that decimal point 2 places to the left. And this is 0.008. And then since the 40 is on the top, the 0.008 is on the bottom. You divide those and you should end up with 5,000. If you ended up with an answer of 50, you didn't move your decimal point over.